If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Debbie Peterson. Debbie is a dynamic speaker and consultant who helps her audiences and clients harness the power of the mind to achieve the next level of personal empowerment in business and life. Through her speaking and consulting business, Debbie travels the country, helping individuals to unlock the power of their self-leadership and gain unshakable clarity on their potential and how they can achieve it. She's a dear friend and colleague. Debbie, what an absolute pleasure it is to welcome you back to the show. And thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Oh, my goodness, Susan, it's always a pleasure.
Debbie, since you and I spoke, I don't know how long it was, but however long it was, you've changed your direction a little bit in your business in terms of your speaking and your coaching. Talk to us a little bit about the shift and why you did that.
Yes. Things aren't always linear when it comes to feedback that you get from taking certain initiatives. There's always something in there for you with the feedback. And COVID and the speaking world, they didn't dance well together, oil and water, so to speak. So during COVID, it caused me to look at other opportunities, which was a great undertaking. I learned so much about myself and my business and what it is that I want to do. Coming out of COVID, however, a different sort of feedback presented itself. And it really caused me to evaluate what brings me joy in my business. What is it that I want to do? Because one of my beliefs is just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. I found myself in that place of putting pressure on myself, saying I should do this. And then just getting to the point saying, no, I want more joy in what I do. And so after COVID, I kind of shifted again. And instead of going business to consumer or the B2C model, really focused more on the B2B model. And it all starts with my keynoting, which is an absolute joy for me to do. That's where I'm putting my time and my energy and my resources into up-leveling that.
Excellent. Yes. I mean, the speaking business, the landscape changed considerably, obviously, during COVID. And then after COVID, as you rightly said, is that so many people looked at their businesses differently and said, I don't need to have to do this if I don't enjoy it. And especially speaking and business, I mean, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, it's so easy to burn out. Talk to us about the idea of keynoting and how would an author, a first-time author, go out and even think about doing keynotes? I mean, what are some of the first steps they need to take?
Yeah. So let me just say from a marketing perspective, in my world, my belief, how I run my business is there is no better way to advertise who you are and what you do, what you provide than speaking. Because especially when you get it, when you're in the right place, it is an audience of your potential clients or customers. So if you are a new author and you're looking to enter into the speaking world, it has taken me years to get to this point. There's one of the reasons that clarity is my word and my superpower, my book, my business, because for me, it's always about getting clarity. And when I spoke of that feedback in the beginning, that's what I'm talking about. That's part of the process of getting clarity. So as a new author and someone who might consider speaking in their business, it's really understanding who your book is meant for and how you can extrapolate that to an event or a conference, maybe as a keynoter, maybe as a breakout or a workshop. but it's really understanding who are you looking to serve and how are you looking to serve them. So, Susan, I'm sure this is something that you coach your clients about, having that understanding of, who the book is meant for. And my belief, again, this is what's worked for me in my business, is that the riches are in the niches. That's the catchphrase that gets bandied about. And for me, that's what allowed me to build my business. But it all starts with understanding who the book is meant for.
Yeah, that's so brilliant.
First. Yeah.
Just that honing down. And I think that's a big mistake that I see so many people make. And I know when I started out, I wanted to be all things to all people. I did customer service. I did some women's programs. I did all sorts of things that I had no business doing, but I thought that that was the way to do it because that was the way I was going to get work. But what you're saying, and I love that, and obviously the whole riches and niches, because obviously that's the title of one of my best-selling books. But who is your niche market? Who are the people who really need what you have to offer? Knowing that, and as you rightly say, getting that clarity on, first of all, who it is, and then how you can help them. Could you give us some pointers about finding that clarity? I think that's so key. I think it's easy to say it, but actually digging deep and saying, well, okay, how do I get clear?
Yes. Let me just first say that there are generalists out there that are very, very successful. This is my model, and this is what I have chosen to do. And here's the reason why. If you're going to get hired as a keynote or a breakout or a workshop leader, the people who are going to hire you and pay money are going to pay money because they want an expert in what they're looking for. They want a subject matter expert to come in and deliver some sort of service around a topic or an industry. And so they don't want someone who speaks on anything or everything plus, except algebra. I had a speaker friend that's what they used to say. I speak on everything but algebra. If people are going to pay you money, you need to be seen as an expert. If you've written a book, then I would assume you're an expert in that area. So you've already got a leg up. Who are the people that can use your expertise? That is the start of it. And so if I could use myself as an example, I didn't write my book until after I started my speaking career. So I didn't have that sort of clarity going in. But what happened was I'm a trainer, a certified trainer of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And at a high level, NLP is about, neuro is the mind, language is your language, what you speak, what you think, and programming are your habits. And so NLP at a high level is being able to identify a pattern that you're running, whether that pattern is serving you or not. But if it's not serving you, then you be able to interrupt that pattern and create a new pattern that does serve you. So if it's something that's pulling you down or sabotaging you, you want to recognize you're doing it, interrupt it, and do something different as a result. NLP changed my life. That's what I wanted to speak on when I first decided that I was going to do speaking. And let me also say, I am an introvert. So if you are an introvert, don't let that stop you, because oftentimes you can connect really well with your audience. It's just how you recharge afterwards. But back to me getting clarity at the beginning of my speaking career, the problem was I could use NLP in any industry, in any area of life for anyone. What I found myself doing is just what you spoke of, Susan, was, can you do this? Sure. Can you do that? Sure. And I'm creating all of these programs from start, and it's exhausting. It's very time consuming. Plus, I don't have the advantage of knowing who my perfect avatar is, knowing who I really want to serve and how I can help them with my content. That was the problem. I got myself so wound up and stuck that finally, out of just sheer desperation, I just said, okay, financial services, banking. I remember I had a friend who had spoken at the Women in Banking event in Florida. So I asked my friend to introduce me to her friend. And when I had a conversation with her, asked her if she would introduce me to Florida bankers. She did that. And I ended up getting the keynote. That was my very first keynote. That started the process of me really drilling down into my niche. What it looks like today is that what I did at that event is that I had it videotaped and I got the testimonials. And because I did it once, I could do it again. There are 50 other state banking associations, and I've spoken to over 20 of them. That allowed me to leverage that asset that I had created. It allowed me to connect with a demographic. It allowed me to know what their problems were and how I could serve them. So that clarity was gold. It allowed me to leverage what I had created. And so what started from there is doing a lot of women in banking events, then doing a lot of women in leadership events, and then also exploring within financial services, emerging leader events. And so what it looks like now is financial services is the top, the umbrella. Underneath financial services, it is banking associations, banks, credit union leagues and associations, credit unions, and then larger wealth management or financial planning firms. That's who I expend my energy reaching out to. And I know that each one of those has usually women in leadership organizations and emerging leaders or young professional events. I know that underneath those two demographics, I have topics that help develop a person to get clarity in their career and to get clarity in their leadership. Those are the two directions that I go. If somebody comes to me and they want a program on conflict management, that's not my wheelhouse. I'll refer them out. If somebody comes to me and they want something on customer service, sure, I could create it, but it's not in my wheelhouse. I'll refer it out. I have gotten really good at understanding and creating the assets and then leveraging them. It's easier on me, and it allows me to be more focused on who I can serve and how I can serve them. So I know who I need to be talking to. I know how I can be reaching out to them, and I know why I'm a fit for their events.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love the way that you took us through the different levels or even subsections of an industry, because that's the beauty of niche marketing, is that you can start penetrating a niche and then it's got lots of different like branches of a tree that you can go off. And your women in leadership, you've got women in leadership in all these different areas that you were talking about, in those financial services, in the banking, in the financial planning. I mean, those are all different aspects within a market. And obviously, it's a very lucrative market. I love that model. So thank you for making it so clear how you can go down, but it's finding that industry. Now, let me ask you, did you have experience in the banking industry before you even decided to go into that industry?
No, none whatsoever. I had no financial services experience at all. And that tripped me up a little bit in the beginning. But then I experienced how well received my content was. And because, again, NLP is about excellence. It's about being able to replicate achieving the outcomes that you want. So it was applicable in financial services. Let me also say that is my model, but that's not to say that if someone else comes to me and says, hey, can you do this, that I won't do it, as long as one of the assets that I have already created is a fit. So, for example, a large insurance company approached me and they were having a women in leadership event and they wanted me to come speak. Well, insurance wasn't one of the industries that I mentioned, but my content was a fit. So I said yes. And oftentimes that'll give me a clue about other areas that I can serve. So I went deep in financial services. I went, vertically in financial services. But another way I can leverage my expertise is emerging leaders in other industries or women in leadership in other industries. That is another way that I can narrow down. I do some CEO work, but not a whole lot, because again, going back to that joy, I have fun with the women in business, women in leadership audiences and the emerging leaders. They are there. They are curious. They want the information. It's joyful for me. So that's why I lean into it.
it's joyful for you, but of course that's contagious, because if it's joyful for you, that's going to spill over obviously into the audiences. And as you rightly said, this idea of, yes, women in leadership, you could go into many different industries. In fact, I think all the different industries out there have got some aspect of women in leadership, hopefully, in this day and age. However, because you're focused primarily in that financial industry, you've got enough to take care of there. However, I think something that you pointed out is that if somebody comes along that doesn't fit into that industry that you spend most of your time in, doesn't mean you can't do it, as you rightly said, if it still has that topic in mind, which is for you, women in leadership. So yes, I guess that's something when people say to me, well, Susan, if I'm in this niche market, what happens if somebody else comes along? Like you say, you've got a choice. You can either do it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And, when it comes to experience, so my joke was, I don't have banking experience, but I use a bank. Does that count? I belong to a credit union and I have a bank and I have a wealth management advisor, but, I utilize their services, but I don't have a background there. One of the really good books that I would recommend to someone is a book called The Referable Speaker by Michael Port and Andrew Davis. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay.
I love the title. I'm going to check it out.
It is a really great read on industries, and how they would describe what I did is I have achieved what they call fractal fame, meaning that on that branch of the tree, I've gone way out on that branch or way down vertically in that industry, and people know who I am. I'm not famous because of anything that I've done in the industry. If I was, for instance, CEO of a large bank, let's say, and now I'm out and I'm speaking on women's leadership because I was the first woman CEO to achieve this, that's a different kind of fame. It's more in the industry. For me, just because of the repetition, I've chosen this lane and I've gotten fame, quote unquote, in this lane because I've done it enough that people know who I am. There's global fame, people like Oprah. Well, I'm never going to achieve the fame that Oprah has achieved. I'm not Oprah, and that's not my desire either. Or you can have people, celebrities like one of the past presidents, or there's all different kinds of ways to achieve fame. But in this particular book, they talk about being a referable speaker and how you can go about doing that. Me choosing a lane and going deep in that lane is one of the things that they describe. They talk about how to do that. So it's a good read.
What I like about this is that often when people say to me, well, I don't have a niche, and we look at how to find the right niche for them, I look at their expertise. Now, you're actually saying you don't necessarily have to have that expertise, which I know can be learned. Mm-hmm. But what then you focus on, and help me with this, but is that whole idea of women in leadership, because that's where your expertise lies. You've just chosen to blend that with the banking, the financial services industry. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
I did that with my trade show training. In fact, when I think about it, my trade show training program was applicable to all industries. And I never went in and specialized in just one industry. So it was, I did this for many different in the educational, in the medical environment. I mean, I did this in the automotive, I did this in so many different industries. Mm-hmm. Now, I chose to do that. You are limiting yourself because it's such a big marketplace within just the banking. But as you said, as we mentioned before, there's a fact that if somebody else comes along in some other environment, that you can easily transition because you have the assets to do that. And it's not hard work. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you go in and do a speaking or training gig.
I know that, there's someone that you and I both know Scott Carley. And I remember having a conversation with him about the business model that he had created, where his expertise was. And just by having that conversation, it generated some ideas about speaking. This would be something that would be great for franchises or even multi-level marketing organizations. So sometimes when you examine the expertise or the model contained in the book, it can give you clues about other industries that it would be a good fit for.
And then you've got the choice as to how you want to penetrate that. I believe in going narrow and deep, which is exactly what you're doing, is going narrow and deep in this one industry. I just felt in terms of the way I positioned myself that it was much more effective and efficient in terms of your marketing. And then now if you write articles or if you do podcasts or interviews, other than, of course, this one, that you're speaking to your audience. Correct?
And it makes it easy, to customize it too, because podcasts, the book, articles, those are all assets too. And those are assets. Speaking is a long game. This year, things are a little wonky. Some things are more short term. Others are longer term. Generally speaking, is a long game. It is getting in touch with that client and building the relationship with them. What that takes is many touches. So it is finding a way to be of good service to them and demonstrating that what you have will serve the clients that they have at their event. Maybe you send them a video that you recorded that's now on your YouTube channel. And in case it's helpful for them, maybe you send them a copy of your book. To be clear, when I wrote my book, I didn't write it to be a New York Times bestseller. I wrote it because it's going to help me market. It's going to help me be seen as visible in my market, give me more credibility. And it's also going to give me something that, I can send to stay in touch. I can sell at the back of the room. I can give it away as an ethical bribe to get my audience to play with me. There's a number of ways that I can use it. So are all the other assets. Sending someone an article. Hey, I know that this is going on in your industry and I wanted to share this with you in case it would be helpful. Feel free to use it as you'd like. I don't worry about people having my content. I want as many people as possible to have my content. Nobody can present it like I can. I want people to be aware of it.
Oh, there's so many things. This is so rich, Debbie. Thank you. I mean, number one, speaking is a long game without any shadow of a doubt. You're not just going to send something to somebody and all of a sudden they're going to say, oh, yes, you've got to be my keynote speaker and you've never done anything before. So it's not going to happen. Well, it might, but chances are slimmer than,
That's like, what they say about overnight success. Oh, yeah, they were an overnight success. It only took them, how many years to get there. Although I will tell you, some clients, they're radio silent. A prospective client, you'll reach out and maybe you'll hear something back about, well, send me some more information. And then all of a sudden you're not hearing anything and you want to get discouraged. But if they reached out and they had an interest, then finding ways to stay in touch and not taking it personally. If you reach out once and you don't hear anything and you give up, then that's not the way to go about building a speaking business. You've got to have more tenacity than that.
And I think that just segues very nicely into the whole idea of building relationships. And building relationships, again, isn't an overnight thing. My mentor always said it takes 15 years to become an overnight success. So yes, I mean, it takes time, it takes energy, and it's all part of this long game. And then the whole idea too, what you mentioned, and I think we could go into each one of these and have a whole podcast episode on them, but then how you use your book. The way you use your book is very strategic. It's not about necessarily selling your books. It's about the credibility. The book is about clarity. Your whole subject matter is about bringing clarity into your life, your business, your career, your everything about you. I mean, this is so rich. Debbie, I'm fearful we're running out of time. That's a horrible thing to always say to a guest.
I know.
We're right smack in the middle of something meaty, but that just leaves it open for having you back yet again, which would be an enormous pleasure. How can our listeners find out more about you, about your book, whatever you want them to find out more about? How can they do that?
they could go to debbiepetersonspeaks.com. All of the consulting and the speaking that I do is on that site, as well as the book is on the site, videos and blogs and anything that might be helpful. I'm not sure in what way. I don't coach people on what you and I are talking about for a living, but I'm always happy to help if somebody has some questions.
And that's what I love. I mean, we're all part of the National Speakers Association, and there's such a sharing way about what people do in this industry, and it blows people away. We've just had our annual conference, Influence, that you and I attended, and I was an ambassador to first timers. They just couldn't believe how generous people were in sharing their expertise and sharing how they do the business. And everybody does the business differently, as we know, but that's
they do. And what I speak of is just one way that I do mine. And I have never encountered a more giving organization than NSA. As a matter of fact, I had a couple first timers as well that I supported through the event, and that was just so much fun. The other thing is I received my CSP, my Certified Speaking Professional designation this year at Influence, and you know what that takes. It's a lot of work. I would not have walked across main stage. I would not have my business that I have. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for the people who supported me. NSA is it's an incredible organization. So if you are thinking about speaking, NSA is one of the things that I would encourage you to look at.
And it's for the education, it's for the networking, it's for the building relationships. It's not to get business. People make the mistake that they think by joining that it's a way to get business, but it isn't. And yes, let's give a huge shout out for getting your CSP, because that is so incredible. I remember getting mine in 2000. It seems like a long time ago. It is a long time ago. But more and more meeting planners are looking for speakers who have that designation. And it's the only earned designation, listeners, from the National Speakers Association. That, again, we could go off on a tangent all about that. Debbie, before we completely run out of time, I'd love you to leave our listeners with a golden nugget. What would that be?
Start by getting clarity on who you can help and how. And pick one. If you've got many, many, many options, pick one and take action going from there.
Oh, my goodness. So powerful, listeners. This, again, is one of those super rich interviews that you're going to have to listen to a few times over to really get the nuggets, the beautiful treasure that Debbie has shared with us today. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected to, let's you and I jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales, because you've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. Go to brainstormwithsusan.com to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.